Welcome to Therapy Unplugged, the podcast where two therapists offer insights to the real-life issues we all experience. We are your hosts, Sarah Benoit and Meaghan McCullough. Welcome back, listeners. It's good to have you here as always. Hi, Meaghan. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. I'm doing well.
Good. So today we are going to talk about seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. And we figured this was a pretty timely topic, given that at least here in New England, we are still in fall, but it's definitely getting colder and we're heading into those darker winter months. So I'm sure many listeners are familiar with seasonal affective disorder. But if you're not, SAD is a form of depression that is related to the seasonal changes. And it usually begins and ends at the same time every year. The majority of people that experience this start to see symptoms in the fall, which is why we figured this was a good time to do it. And those symptoms really continue throughout the winter. However, what I found was really interesting is that it is possible that people experience this during the spring and summer months. And I really thought when I saw that, I had always that's what happens for me. Like, I thought I was a little crazy because I was like, well, am I the only one that gets like irritable and like I have a really hard time making that transition from winter to spring, summer, even though those are my favorite seasons. And once we started prepping for this episode, it like all fit into place for me. So it was really interesting because I only have maybe like, I don't know, one or two other people that I know that that's what happens for them. And I was like, okay, so it's not just that I'm weird. It's like, it's a thing.
Right. And I remember when you had shared that with me a few weeks ago when I think we were both kind of doing some research or prep for this episode. And I was surprised too, for two reasons. One, I had never come across that. I've never heard of, symptoms sometimes arising for people more in that transition to spring. But I was also surprised because I know that the warmer months are your favorites.
Mhm.
So it's a really interesting thing to look at. And one that whether we're talking about the winter, which is definitely the category I fall into,
Mm.
noticing changes for myself and my mood in the winter, or we're talking about the spring. It's just, I think that it's important for listeners to know that they really aren't alone in this.
For sure, for sure. And it's interesting too because this was something I didn't anticipate, and I don't know why, because I mean, I have heard this, but seasonal affective disorder is more prevalent in women, and it will often begin in young adulthood. And I mean, I don't not expect, but this part didn't surprise me because we live in the Northeast. This is something we I can't speak, routinely go through, but there is a higher chance of it being in the Northeast or the northern climates.
Mhm.
And I think, we'll get into this, but I think there's a lot of things that we can do to kind of stave it off. But again, knowing like we only can control so much. I mean,
Mhm.
so, and the other thing I want to throw out there, because this part, it didn't, again, it's like this surprise, not surprise thing, but it is common with co occurring disorders. So,
Yeah.
some of which include like anxiety, obviously depression, bipolar disorder. I was a little surprised to see eating disorders in there. And again, not sure why I'm surprised by that, but I think, and the reason I'm even bringing this up is because I think it can get complicated. And it's not, I think, uncommon, maybe say for someone in the winter months up here, starting therapy as an example, and someone might be, "Oh, you're depressed." But then you realize once the warmer weather comes, it's like, "Oh, that wasn't kind of that
Right.
clinical depression, so to speak."
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and the only thing that's coming to my mind to add to this kind of intro that we're,
Mhm,
doing is that one thing that surprised me was that I had read when I was doing the research that seasonal affective disorder affects about 5 to 10% of the population.
mhm,
And my immediate response in my mind was, wow, that's low. To me, in my own experience personally, like with friends, family, myself included, or whether we're talking about, my therapy practice,
mhm,
it the percentage seems much higher. I mean, I would say I've probably had about at this point, and we're in what, mid-November.
mhm.
I'm gonna say about 80% of clients have at least mentioned
Wow.
that they're noticing, a dip in mood or more fatigue or just kind of like a lack of motivation as our hours of sunlight goes down.
Mm,
So I don't know if that's just a result of, we do live in the Northeast in the United States. This is a common thing for us up here. Maybe it's that combined with my profession, right? That like, I am a mental health provider, so maybe I'm hearing more about it.
mhm.
But in my experience, at least in my little microcosm, um, of a snapshot of this, it's much higher.
Very interesting. I haven't in my practice, haven't seen that.
Hmm.
But I totally agree in the sense that when you said that 5%, that seemed very low, and, um, I will be curious. This is, I mean, obviously something I'll be paying more attention to, and again, maybe I know that I have probed, but I've probed under the guise of the time change, and with the fall back, with it getting darker earlier,
Yep.
that is one thing that people have not that they've struggled, but it's they've noticed, obviously.
Hmm. Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
Mm.
Because I'm definitely talking to a lot of clients that are bringing it up on their own.
Ah, okay.
Um, and yeah, it's no small thing. The other day, it wasn't even 4 o'clock in the afternoon yet. It was like 3:40 something, and it looked so dark outside. And yeah, going back to your earlier comment because I think it's a really good one. It's like part of I think this show is about what is in our control
Mhm.
to help and what is out of our control, right? Because
Right.
obviously the weather, the time change is 100% out of our control.
Mhm.
So is there a way also as we're talking about strategies here, is there a way to come to some sort of acceptance with that? Um, so yeah,
And that's a good point too. I mean, even that word acceptance in the sense of accepting that this is maybe part of whether it's this is how the seasons roll or this is part of your trajectory, thinking too like, "Okay, this isn't permanent. This isn't forever." Because I think that's one of the things that can happen, and what I'm thinking of is how it's this form of depression, and that's when we're depressed, it's often hard to see the bigger picture and
right.
to realize, "Okay, this isn't gonna this feels like forever,
Mhm,
and maybe it's 4 o'clock and I'm ready for bed because it's dark, but that
mhm.
doesn't mean that's what it's gonna be like even in a month or 2 months."
Right, right. And, I just had a thought pop up
Yeah.
into my mind, and I apologize if I'm skipping ahead here into a strategy, but I hadn't actually thought of this until this moment, and I didn't put this in my notes, but perhaps, thinking about this as it's seasonal, right? And this too
Mhm.
shall pass. This isn't going to last forever. Um, Maybe it's also, you know, really worthy of us to think about how how can I use the seasons, like, appropriately? Meaning, maybe these cold, dark winter months, maybe it is a more appropriate time for us to retreat, for
Mhm.
us to maybe do less, right? Maybe we are a little less social. And what if that is okay?
Mhm.
As long as it doesn't tip the scales, right, into something, that doesn't feel okay. But I do think of wintertime as a time to retreat within a little bit more. And then the springtime comes, right? And maybe naturally, if we follow the seasons, we suddenly have that burst of energy, right, to go out into the world.
Mhm.
So maybe just taking a more, big picture view of this as well might be helpful for some people.
It's interesting that you bring this up because yesterday, my husband and I were having a conversation, and I think it was about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said, "You know what's really funny?" Is I said, "If it's spring or summer or even early fall, if it's a Sunday afternoon, we are outside. We are,
Mhm,
we're either enjoying it or we're shoring stuff
mhm,
up or we're
mhm.
planting or whatever we're doing." And I said, "But when it comes to this time of year, we actually give ourselves permission to sit inside and maybe read a book or watch TV or just hang out." And I said, "We'll do that late fall and throughout the winter, primarily because it's cold and bitter."
Right,
But
right.
it's and I know I have, and we can talk about this later, but I have started to frame my seasons in a way around different hobbies,
Nice.
and we can talk more about that, when we get to the strategies
Okay.
part, because you just spurred that in me. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I
Yeah,
was doing that."
right, exactly. Yeah, I don't think I had realized I was maybe doing that a little bit too until we're talking about this today. So, absolutely. So, let's definitely loop back to that.
Yeah. So, why don't we get into, I mean, the symptoms? And I think they're important because, again, I'm sure if listeners, if you've experienced this, isn't gonna be news to you. But I did, pardon me, find it interesting that there are common symptoms that people experience if they experience sad in the winter, and then there are different symptoms if you experience it in the spring or summer.
Mhm.
So I would be curious because I think we're pretty much on the same page here, but with either yourself or with clients, what are the symptoms that you see people presenting?
Sure. So, we've already obviously mentioned you know, I think the obvious one here is you tend to have a depressed mood. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean you have depression,
Mhm.
right? But there is a certain just kind of low level energy that people will report
Right.
in the winter months that I'm not hearing nearly as much once spring comes. I think with that depressed mood, a lack of motivation, again, that kind of like inner urge, just, I don't really feel like going out. I think I just want to stay in. And again,
Mhm.
that's okay. A big one that I read about and I hear about is not only fatigue, but oversleeping, like just sleeping more than usual.
Mhm.
And, one thing that I think is interesting about that is, um, so this idea that SAD, seasonal affective disorder, it's believed to be related to a decrease in sunlight exposure.
Mhm.
Um, But one thing I read that I find interesting is that this decrease in sunlight exposure can sometimes lead to an increase in the production of the hormone, melatonin. Now,
Mhm.
many of you may be familiar with melatonin because it's used a lot. You can buy it just at your local health food store, or probably even a grocery store. But a lot of people use melatonin as a natural way to try to help them sleep at night.
Right.
Um, so this idea here is that there's an overproduction of melatonin that we produce in our bodies that might also contribute to this just feeling of fatigue or
Mm.
oversleeping. So I thought that was interesting enough to mention.
Yes.
And then the only other ones that are coming to my mind, and you already mentioned this, is kind of the sense of just irritability,
Mm.
maybe a lack of patience. I think sometimes people also will have difficulty concentrating and focusing, whereas maybe typically in other months of the year they don't have such issue with that. And then social withdrawal, which we've already talked about, and again, which to a degree I think could be uh, normal
Right.
for this time of year. So, am I forgetting any?
I think the only one that I would throw out there, and this is more in terms of extreme cases, but suicidal ideation
Mhm.
can pop up. And
Yes,
that's when I think that idea of hopelessness just gets to that, it's so extreme. And I would say in those cases, that's when, professional help is the most important.
absolutely, absolutely. Professional help would come over any other strategy, natural
Right.
strategy that we might suggest. Yep.
Yeah. What I found interesting, is some of the hallmarks if you experience seasonal affective disorder in the spring or summer, it's almost, excuse me, a mirror image. Like you mentioned sleep.
Mhm,
Um, so in the winter months, it might be excessive sleep,
mhm,
but in the summer months, it could be more insomnia.
mm,
And yeah, which I thought was interesting. Again, that irritability, I think in the colder months, some people will gravitate more towards like comfort foods. Whereas in the summer months, you're gonna see probably more of a poor appetite and weight loss. So, it's very interesting in that it can really be a mirror image.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because now I'm thinking about how it's so true in the winter months. I really crave warm foods. Like,
Mm,
all I've been really wanting lately is soup,
mm.
but, like, good soup, like, not like, soup I'm getting from the co-op or something, and in it but in the spring and summer, I'm really just craving colder foods,
Mm,
salads and things like that, but which do not really appeal to me in the winter.
ah. So, as far as I don't know that there's really any other symptoms that we've missed, and I will throw out there to listeners, if you feel if you've experienced this and you feel like there's a huge thing that we've missed on there, please let us know, because we wanna be as comprehensive as we can. Um, as far as treatments, obviously, the 2 of us are therapists, so this is part of what we do. Um, I'm curious if there are things, Megan, that you personally really have an affinity towards or things that you've kind of employed yourself. I know there's a couple things that I just do whether I need to or not, but I'm like, why not be preemptive?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I have quite a few actually, so if you want, we can go back and forth. I
Sure.
don't wanna. Um, okay, so basically what Sarah's saying is in addition to obvious, like, go seek help and get
Mhm.
therapy. would help. There are a lot of things through the years that might seem small, but as these techniques have kind of built up for me, I actually find they help me immensely to get through the winter months because I will be very clear. I I I I hate using the word hate, I really do, but and I'm really working on this. But in the past, I would have said I hate the cold. Like, I
Mm,
really dislike being cold. And, so getting back to the idea of what can we control, what can't we control? I have 0 control over the temperature,
mhm,
right? I have 0 control if the sky is gray and there's no sun in sight. But what I do have control over, and this might be the hypnotherapist coming out in me, but, I do have control over my thoughts. I
mhm,
had control to I'm able to visualize. Um, and so one thing that I might implement is, literally, like, in the morning when I wake up, in the warmer months, it's very common for me to start my day by just stepping outside because I love the outdoors in the warmer months
mhm,
and listening to the birds.
mhm,
So that is something that, I really it look forward to. It boosts my energy. It can start my day off on the right foot. I don't have any desire in the wintertime to go to do that. But what I will do is I will listen to audio of birds chirping.
mm,
And it may sound a little silly, but there's so many different resources now and ways that you could do that. You can literally just go on YouTube and type in nature sounds. Um, but so the idea is that as I'm listening to, say, morning, just birds chirping in the morning, I might also be closing my eyes and just visualizing. Perhaps I'm, walking down a road in the summertime, or I'm visualizing just, sitting outside with the sun coming down and warming my face. And I'm not saying this is for everybody,
mhm,
but if you tend to have a good imagination, if you tend to be able to just daydream a bit, you might wanna try this because it has helped it has helped me a lot as it's
mm.
become part of my morning meditation does.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've done is, and again, this is kind of I do this all year round, but it's also a preemptive, is you mentioned earlier the vitamin D,
Mhm.
and that is something that I take every day, and I will often say that to clients. I'm like, "How's your vitamin D levels? Are you taking any? Do you need to talk with your doctor about it?" Or, whatever. Um, and I think, you talk about being outside, and I'm outside whether I wanna be every day, because of the dogs. Like, I have to be out there. I have to be out there
Mhm.
playing with them, and
Mhm.
and they have to do their business, but it's interesting. Like, I think you said this I remember you saying this a long time ago in one of our first season episodes, was that it's this idea of, around the hating the cold, and I think you said, like, you're trying to reframe how the fact that, like, if you can feel that coldness, like, it's an
Yeah.
awakening and it's bringing you, my word, like, life um, and I think and I don't think this was conscious on my part, but that made me think about, okay, how do I wanna structure my hobbies, so to speak? Because there's gonna be some hobbies that I can only do in the summer. Like,
Mhm.
I cannot be kayaking on a frozen lake. Um,
Nope.
and no, it's not gonna work. So I don't know if this is helpful for other people, but I can tell you that by starting to look and say, okay, this is clearly a summer activity for me, and this is a winter hobby for me. Um, it has done a few things for me. It allows me hope, and it gives me something to look forward to because, for example, like I said, I cannot kayak on a frozen lake, so I am really looking forward to being able to do that once it's ice out and it's warmer.
Mhm.
Um, so then, okay, what do I wanna do in the winter months that are
Mhm.
going, that I can look forward to, that I know this is not something. And for example, I mean, this isn't we haven't been able to do this the last couple of years because our snow has been, junk, but snowshoeing is one that we
Yep.
enjoy. Um, I've also found that I tend to, and I think it's because I love the summer so much, I don't want the summer to be the time that I'm inside. And I mean, obviously I'm working, but historically I use the colder months if I'm revamping my business. If there's something that I want to if there's an educational piece I want to learn something new, that's when I start it, or that's when I do the bulk of the work. Um, I find that for me, that idea of kind of hunkering down, and whether it's being creative or
Mhm.
starting something new, that's a good time for me to do it, because if
Mhm.
it's summertime, I wanna be out there, I wanna be, walking around, on the water, whatever it is, and, again, I don't think this has been a conscious thing for me, but that's how it's played out, and now that it's in my view, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I do that."
Yeah, absolutely, and a couple things are coming to my mind. I too it's so funny. So, like, the past couple of weekends, I've done these not all day, but these 3-hour-long workshops that we need for our continuing education credits, right, to keep our therapy license.
Mhm.
And what I've realized is, oh, yeah, I am packing them all in now because the last thing I wanna do in the spring or summer or even the fall is take some of these workshops. And so, yes, I am naturally really getting going, just doing those now. And one other thought I'm having with you had mentioned, okay, what hobbies can I do in the winter besides, those kind of things, those practical things that we need to do at some point? We might as well do them when the sun's not shining. Um, I haven't done this yet,
Okay.
but I've really thought this year, this winter, about um, getting into ice skating.
Mm,
I've mentioned a few times, I think, in this podcast about roller skating,
yes.
and, we live very close to a little park that has a pond that they will oftentimes clear in the winter, and so I have no excuses, right, for like, I could literally walk there,
Mm,
um, grab a pair of ice skates. I don't have any right now, I'm thinking about getting some. Now I remember ice skating when I was young, and I liked it a lot. I may
mhm,
hate it, right? I don't know, but now that I'm an adult, but it's it's kind of like, okay, I wanna put a little effort into, right, just trying to find something, um, that I can do outside, like you're saying, um, that can be enjoyable.
yes.
So that is on my list for this year.
And you use an important word, which is effort. And I think sometimes, especially when things are difficult or challenging, which is how life can feel when seasonal affective disorder hits, I do think it's remembering that. It is about making the effort, because it probably feels easier to cave and just say, "Well, I'm tired, so I'm just gonna sleep in," or "I'm gonna take a nap," and the next thing you know, like, you slept your whole afternoon away.
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Another one on my list that kinda goes with that
Mhm.
is just practicing, gratitude.
Yes.
And one of the examples I have that just happened the other day is, I was walking my dog, Finn, in the morning like I do every morning, and, I stepped outside, and I was bundled up, and I was still cold.
Mm.
And so I start walking him, and it took me a couple minutes to realize that I was so in my head about just how cold it was, right?
Ah.
Like, I was in my head about, "Oh, I can't wait to get back get warm by the stove." So, I identified it, right, that I was having that thought that, "Oh, a burr," right? I'm cold, and I'm like, "Alright, I'm gonna try to reframe here."
Nice.
And so what I did was I suddenly kinda, like, gazed up into the sky, and it was the most brilliant, beautiful blue
Mm.
that I've ever seen, and I would have missed it if I hadn't stopped, acknowledged, like, where my head was, that it was just in this loop, right,
Mhm.
of, "Oh, bird, ugh," you know? And, so when I was able to stop that thought and look up into the sky, I I said, "Okay, for the rest of this walk, why don't I just try to feel gratitude for how beautiful
Mm.
beautifully blue the sky was?" And I'm not saying that it worked perfectly,
Mhm.
right? Like, but I definitely felt better by the time I got home than I would have if I had just been stuck in my loop. So, for me, I think it's a really good time to practice gratitude.
Mhm.
I think we've talked about this before. Gratitude is easy when life feels wonderful.
Right.
Um, but what about when you're feeling, more challenged? That's when the benefits of gratitude, I think, can really just sink in and, um, help transform you.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure. One of the other things that I was thinking about is and you made me think of, I mean, you really described a couple of things there besides gratitude. I mean, you used reframing, you were very present in the moment,
Mm.
um, and at least for me, I think it also speaks to kind of sticking to some of the basics, meaning, don't underestimate the power of sticking to your exercise routine
Yes.
or your dietary routine, um, your sleep hygiene, all of that, because I think it's in some ways it's a form of prevention because we all know that, when we're getting enough sleep, we're eating well, we're exercising, we're generally doing better. And I think it's a way to try to kind of just keep us on track. So if we get thrown a curveball, say from seasonal affective disorder,
Mhm.
we can be more resilient.
Yes. So glad you brought that up, Sarah. Pretty much it's all the healthy habits that I think we talked about in our last episode. Yeah, they probably become even more important for a lot of us at this time of year.
Yeah.
And I like thinking about it in terms of it's building our resilience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think for some, and as we're talking, I mean, I think to your point, you said earlier, like this, some of these things may not be for everybody. And I think
Mhm.
one of the ideas, and I've had clients that have fit into this category, but it's going to the doctor and saying, okay, how would an antidepressant help me through these months?
Mhm.
Or a homeopathic remedy of some sort.
Right.
And I will say at least from and this is my bias, I mean, this is from the kind of the pharma piece of it. if you decide or it you find that being on an antidepressant is helpful, this could be one of those times where it's really just a seasonal thing for you.
Yes.
And I'm not a doctor and I can't prescribe and I can't do any of that stuff. But I do think it's important if that is and really again it's with homeopathy as well. It doesn't have to be, "Oh, I'm taking this forever."
Exactly.
And I think it's important to assess if that is a path you choose. Okay, am I getting a benefit from whatever I'm using? And then how long do I stick with it? And then do I transition off? And again, it's very individual. Um, but I kind of have all those caveats because some people get worried and they
Mhm.
think, well, if I start taking X, does that mean I'm going to have to stay on it forever? And it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case.
Absolutely, right. You can almost use it as a carefully, but you can use it as an experiment, right? And maybe another way to look at it is, perhaps first you try some of these other things, right? Like you
Mhm.
increase your vitamin D, you maybe try some, gratitude journals and, the visualization and creating a new hobby, and those kind of things in these darker months. And you see if you feel better.
Right,
And I don't want to oversimplify here, but if you're still finding after you are putting in the effort to feel better, if you're still really having a hard time, that might be the time to say, "Huh, I wonder if just during these winter months, some medication could just increase my baseline," right? So that my baseline of how I'm feeling can go up a couple of notches.
right,
Um, and yeah, I think you're bringing up a really good point, Sarah. I think that there's this fear around some of these antidepressants that, you're suddenly going to be dependent and stuck on them forever. And
mhm,
that's definitely not the case.
right, and I think and I don't know if you see this, but I know, even that idea of seeking out therapy,
Mhm.
I will have some people that will increase the number of sessions during the winter months, and
Right.
then as it gets warmer and it's nicer, they back off, and it's just that extra support,
Right.
and I think, again, it's knowing, like, you have to do what works for you.
Mhm.
It's there's no one size fits all.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. I would say the same thing. I
Mm.
definitely have some clients that increase session frequency just during the winter.
Yep.
And then once those spring summer months hit, they can back off. So you really need to figure out what works for you as an individual, and then what additional supports might you need.
Right. One thing that I found, and this has always been the case for me, is when the time changes, like, I rise with the sun, I
Mhm.
go down with the sun.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
and I did this a few years ago because in the summer months, if it's 4:30 in the morning and the sun's up, I'm ready. I'm like, "Okay, time to get up."
Mhm.
Um, but conversely, now with the sun rising later, I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll just stay in bed," but I can't do that if I have to go to work. Well, the dogs don't let me anyways. But when they're like, "Okay, I'm hungry." But I got an alarm clock that is a light alarm clock. So basically a half an hour before, um, you set it. So say if you set it for 6 o'clock at 5:30, it slowly gets brighter up until
Oh,
6 o'clock
interesting.
comes. And so it's almost like you're rising with, like, how the natural sun rises in the
Mhm.
morning. And I found that really very, very helpful. And what made me think of that is that idea of, light therapy.
Right. Yep.
And I personally haven't used a light box, but I know
Mhm.
you can find them everywhere, like, on
You
Amazon, they're
can't.
not even that
Yep.
expensive.
Yep.
Um, But one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because sometimes people think like, "Oh, well, if I have the lights on in my house, um, that is that's gonna improve my mood." It's actually its own science, and
Mhm,
there's I think the light intensity is when I was reading about them, it's like 10,000 lux. Lux is the light intensity, and the suggestion is you sit in front of your light box for, like, 30 to 45 minutes a day. So
mhm.
that's a lot different than just saying, "Okay, the lights are on in my house," with
Right,
depending on the lights too, like, you certainly don't wanna be under fluorescent lighting all day. Um,
right.
but I just wanna throw that out there because I think some people think, "Well, I've got lights on, so I'm okay, that's helping." But this is
Mhm.
its own
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, there is a difference, and I don't understand, to be honest with you, like, the mechanics
Right.
behind light boxes, but my understanding, right, is that whatever light is that's used in them is supposed to mimic, natural sunlight, um, and and, I do have one. I have not It's not something that I have used, to be perfectly honest, like, religiously enough to know if it's helpful, but what I can tell people, and for me, I think I've just found other ways.
Mhm.
Um, but but I definitely know of people that swear by them.
Mm.
Um, so if it's nothing you've tried before, you may wanna look them up. I think you can get them, like, yeah, you can get them anywhere. They probably vary in cost, but it might be worth a shot.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen, and again, this is advertising, so I have no idea if this is, like,
Mhm.
accurate, but, I've seen, like, people just setting them up on their desk so that they're not just sitting there with the light box in their face for half an hour, but it's there, but they're still doing their work and they're getting the benefit from it.
Yeah, and, again, I am not an expert in this, but
Mhm.
if I'm remembering correctly, when I used one for a while, you're not supposed to stare directly at it.
Ah, okay.
So, it's kind of, my understanding is it's yes, you should be close to it, but it's kinda like it's a little off in your periphery.
Okay.
So, it's not like this thing that you have to just stare at for 45 minutes. It's actually recommended that you are reading or doing whatever, doing some work or something, and it's just a little bit off to your periphery. That's what I've heard anyway
Okay.
with them. Yeah, so yeah, it's not like you have to take 45 minutes out of your day and just, like, stare at the abyss.
Um, the only other thing I have is
Mhm,
that I would throw out there for kind of a treatment, and not everyone can do this or even wants to do this. But if you do have the opportunity to travel to, whether it's for a long weekend or a vacation, to a warmer, sunny climate, I mean, the Northeast, we're kind of notorious for doing that because
mhm,
you'll
mhm.
see a lot of people, especially older people, after retirement where they'll spend their winter months in a warmer southern climate and then come back up here. But if you can do that, even I mean, I've done this where it's just a long weekend and it's just enough where it's like, okay, I feel there's hope that,
Yes, yes.
like it's kind of like that break. I like to go in February because that tends to be our coldest month. Um,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, great. Now I can get through the rest of winter and I'll be
Right.
fine.
Absolutely, no, I'm glad you brought that one up. It can make a world of difference. And it can even make a world of difference before you go, because if it's, December and you have, even like you said, if it's a small trip, but you're going away in February, sometimes just that knowing that, "Okay, I'm gonna get a break," can be enough,
Yes. Yes.
right, to help you get through up until that point. Um, One more thing I will add, because I know that everybody's probably feeling not everybody's feeling like they can take or afford a vacation.
Yes.
There may be smaller things you can do. I'm thinking of a client that she also loves the summer and she loves swimming. And so she ended up getting a membership at it's the Best Western Hotel where there was a heated pool.
Oh.
And that's how she would go like once or twice every week during the winter, um, to this heated pool. Another, thing kind of in that same category that I utilize sometimes at my local YMCA is, a sauna.
Mhm.
And, I don't really have a desire to go there in the summer, but man, every once in a while, just even 10 minutes in there in the winter months can just right? It just again, it might be just that little boost that you need, um, to get you through.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because I have a sauna and I don't use it a lot in the summer.
Mhm.
Um, but in the winter, I mean, it makes my body feel better to be able to
Yeah.
actually sweat in the wintertime. I mean, obviously there's tons of benefits for that, but that's a really good point because it kind of loops back to that um one of the first things you shared around like, even visualizing the sun on your face or whatnot. I mean, when you're sitting in a sauna, it's 135 degrees. That's summer.
Exactly. Yep. I'll add one more to that. Sorry, I
Okay.
just thought of one more. So maybe if you feel like you can't afford a vacation to the Caribbean, could you save up and go get a I've done this before and oh man, now I'm gonna do this as well this winter. A hot stone massage. I don't know
Oh,
if you've ever had one,
I
but
have
oh my
not.
goodness. Yeah, yeah. Um, so there are ways, right, to just give yourself that little extra warmth, that little boost, and these things may go a long way to help you get through the winter.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up today. And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in, and we hope that this was helpful. Be sure to join us next time. We're going to be talking about guilt. And that is probably something that will be helpful given the holiday season. There's a lot of decisions that people need to make during this time. So thank you for tuning in and take good care.
Thanks, everybody.
If you want to share your thoughts or ideas with us, you can email us at therapyunpluggedpodcast@proton.me. Until next time, be sure to subscribe to Therapy Unplugged on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.